Welcome to Chapter 2, Planning and Organizing Instruction. And this will be a thing that will be your job as a special education teacher, is to plan and organize. There is less support for you as a special ed teacher in this area than the regular ed teachers. Now, does that sound bad? Well, it's really not, because it gives you a lot more flexibility also to create and teach and learn the way that you want to, and create that environment for the students also. So it may be good and bad, but nonetheless, with some practice, you'll master this. Now let me take you to where this will be going. First of all, I just want to do a little overview of what this chapter is about and how I'm going to teach it. First part is about physical arrangements of the classroom, and how to arrange students, materials, special areas and centers, even class size, and I'll spend some time on that. And then about arrangements, like large group, small group, even one-on-one, I'll talk about. This is about your paraprofessionals and volunteers, some on that. I will spend less time on these things, and I will ask you to maybe do more of this on your own about the cooperating peer-wide stuff. A little bit on cooperating teaching, but I'm going to ask you to know this because I know there's some questions on the test about peer tutoring, class-wide peer tutoring, and cooperative learning. Then I will talk more about seat work, self-correcting materials, and this will be part of our activities, creating some self-correcting materials, instructional games, technology tools, homework. And those of you with me in SPED 465 know my inclination to technology, and so I'll have some bias of that to share with you. And then some talk about homework. And again, I have some veganisms about homework I want to share with you. And then scheduling, and sometimes you have more control of that than others, but I want you to be aware of some of the things that go into scheduling, whether you're elementary, secondary, or the resource room. And then equipment, and again, I have some biases about this stuff. All right, so that's kind of the flyover, the course outline, and let's tear into it. So get your notes out and get ready to go. Well, this is an important number here. There is about 76 minutes of planning per day after school hours, and I think that could include school hours, but in this world, in this universe of special ed, that's a low amount, and it seems like a lot, but generally, the school day will end about 3:15, and you need to be there till 4. So if you're like the students, if you're diligent, you can get some work done both before and after. But nonetheless, it takes some time. At the beginning of your career, this will be more. And after you teach a few years, you'll pull this together quicker. As a student teacher, you'll spend more. If you're only spending 76 minutes as a student teacher, I'm going to be suspicious of the job you're doing. Okay? During the summer, an average of 59 hours of summer things, and that, again, is a nice number, I think. Very adequate. And then these obstacles, insufficient time of planning. I haven't said this before, I'll say it now and say it again. Time is always a factor for everything in this business. Time is always a factor. Do you have enough time to adequately do the job you want to do? And then obviously some lack of materials and activities can be part of that, and lack of knowledge concerning the students' abilities in academic histories, and of course early on in the year. And we expect, and you will find, that this will get better as the year goes on. And that's why too it's nice to have a same special ed teacher in place over longer periods of time, because you'll get to know them better and be able to shorten this and plan better for them, knowing how they learn and how they don't learn. Okay. So how about the physical arrangements, like students and materials and those centers? Well, first, students so they can easily see and hear teacher presentations, obviously, and so that teacher has easy access to any student. And then arrange students so that teacher easily sees the students. Decide whether desks are arranged in cluster or rows. And then difficult to teach off-task students in the middle of the room near the front. Okay, and that's been around forever. That's where we call it proximity control. Have them close to you. Okay, and let me just take you out to the textbook on this, on the different parts of it. And this was the arrangements of it, so that they can easily see and hear the presentation, so the teacher has easy access to everyone, whether it's doing small groups or whatever, so that you can see everybody. Arrange students so that the teacher easily sees the students. Decide whether the desks are to be arranged in clusters or rows, and it depends on how the room's set up and what you're going to do. And then these difficult or on-task students, middle of the room or near the front. Often I found if they were in the front, it was hard to deal with them, because often your scan of your group is away from the very, very front. And you may get some pushback from students who are very, very in the very front. And so maybe middle, someplace where your eyes can easily, quickly observe. And the same way then, when you go to move, especially elementary kids predominantly like to have different seating arrangements. And so when you move them, they get a new spot, but again, it's in a different spot than where they were. And that's how you do that. When it talks about, being able to see, it's like, there's a little picture of this later, but here's your classroom. Whether you have your rows or what have you, and you have your small group area, that you would work from here. So now you can see the small group, but you can scan the room, not with your back to the room or something like that, because you're still responsible for this group as well as this group. All right. So materials, obviously, what are those frequently used things? If you got whiteboards or certain books or whatever it is, that they're more easily accessible. Other things could be put away a little farther. And then these high traffic areas. And that is if they need to exchange, move during the lessons and stuff, that they can do that quickly without, a lot of problems with that. And then you maybe have academic areas or teacher areas, individual student areas, audiovisual areas, and this generally means, of course, the computers. And it depends what you have for those kinds of things. Okay, so here's what you have for that instructional arrangements. Could be a large group, small group, one student with one teacher, and then adult helpers and students. And then here is that students working together and helping each other. And then what to do with this material, like self-correcting materials, games, technology, homework. So let's look at these. Well, first of all, in the large group, I'll just let you look at that a minute. Can be effective with this social skills instruction. This is another big thing with RTI that I know you're aware of. RTI now, this response to intervention, RTI. Tier 1 is where is generally done in a large group, and that's where you do the large group instructions in Tier 1. Tier 1 is that pyramid. Tier 1 is the bottom here. About 85% of the students here or so. 85 to 90% of the students are Tier 1 learners. Now what else? Here's some advantages of a large group. Obviously, it's time efficient, because you can instruct the whole group together instead of individually doing one-on-one or even small groups. Okay, the students are prepared for lecture type instruction in post-secondary and secondary. And you hear this a lot about kids with learning needs are in their smaller groups or small centered resource room stuff, that this becomes a problem. These lecture types or post-secondary settings. Now, having said that, think about how you're learning now. I think this type of learning would be much more conducive to these same group of kids if they could have this kind of learning that's really one-on-one instruction through the computer. Then general and special educators who co-teach may share the responsibilities. We talked a little bit about that last time, and there's some things in the book about that we'll get to. What are the disadvantages? And you could list these too. Not allow the teacher to have that time with it, doesn't deal with those disabilities. We can't get to all the questions. Some of the kids are intimidated to even ask questions. They don't feel like they can respond quick enough to it, and so you have some of those things happening. You have this off-task thing, always a thing with the big group. It's much easier to keep everybody engaged. Who need more intensive instruction fail to receive it if they need that one-on-one. Frequently moves too slowly for who? The high ability. And it seems like in our world we kind of forget that, but I got kids, especially one, that this isn't always an issue. And I know that sounds proud or whatever, but I'm just telling you, they don't work him hard enough, and it kind of makes me mad that it's too easy. In my opinion, he loafs. He gets straight A's without doing anything, and it makes me kind of mad. He needs to work harder. And then the low ability students, it usually moves, of course, too quickly. And that's what I'm never, a low ability student sits there and is always overwhelmed with how fast it's happening. And what happens then? This. And this is the biggest buzz, I think, in special education today above anything is this managing these behaviors. And it comes often can be related to boredom or frustration, and I think this one more. Okay, that's disadvantage of large groups. Then these guidelines, of course, is try and keep it short. We don't, especially elementary, try not to do long lessons at a time. That just the shorter, quicker things. And you're constantly asking questions to involve them in the lessons and finding some way, whether you're drawing sticks or have random name picker or something, so students have to stay with you. And then this lecture pause routines can help also, and encourage active participation among lower performing students while maintaining the involvement of higher achieving. And this is a challenge, and this is what will separate you from other teachers as a good teacher, is that you have this innate ability to do those two things: maintain the involvement for everybody in your teaching. Use visual aids to promote understanding of lecture materials. A lot of learning, visual learners, maybe you are. So the more visuals, and again, I think the technology is the beauty of bringing those visuals in, and a pace. And I've worked with student teachers that a lively pace is a challenge for them. But keep them paying attention. Can we do that? Determine the rules of behavior during that. Rules of behavior during discussions. What happens if the students misbehave? Do you praise students who follow the rules? What is that part? And then there's flexible grouping, and again in tier 2 here, it's flexible grouping. And what does flexible grouping mean? Anyone? Well, flexible grouping means that if they excel faster than the rest of the group, they can move to a higher functioning group, a higher level group. And so, of course, that kind of is a little tougher if they're in the top group, but that's what they have the ability to change groups based on how fast they're learning. Participation buddies is one the book talks about. Response cards, you ask, pause, call. Signals to avoid surprise call-ons, and this is straight out of the video of Richard Lavoie. How hard can this be? Let me go again back to the textbook and just breeze across some of these things. Here's the teacher materials, teacher areas, academic areas, teacher areas, student areas, and it has a little something about each of those, and then it has these general considerations of this classroom management. First of all, class size in special ed, it's somewhat undefined, and the research isn't real good on it. Here's some examples of how you would work. Here's your front where you're teaching from, your screen, that type of thing, and of course the desk in the back. You kind of see this layout here of how you could set that up. Sometimes you don't have any control over that. Sometimes you do. Okay. I just grabbed this. 1990 found that most positive efforts effects of small classes, 22 or fewer, is kind of what they say is that for early elementary, from like kindergarten to third grade. The research finds that's about the ideal size. and especially for the achievement of at-risk students, these kids have a hard time paying attention. That's about the size. The positive effects of these class size and student achievement decrease as grade level increase. In other words, as they get a little bit older, they don't see the positive effects of having them that small. So reducing class size has little effect on student achievement if the teachers continue to use the same instructional methods in smaller classes they did in larger ones. Hence, if you use smaller class, you can use different methodologies. And reductions in class size have small positive effects on achievements for these kids with learning disabilities. Okay, compared to less costly learning environments. So again, it comes down to you. And here it talks about 6 basic instructional arrangements in the classroom, and it has diagrams of them, how you could set those up. And no, I'm not going to ask you to draw designs or stuff, but someday you will get someplace and want to set up your classroom, and this gives you some ideas. And if nothing else, what I want to say to you is just have a reason why you've set up your classroom like you have it when you get your own special education classroom or even a regular classroom. And let's not have the reason being is this is the way it was when you got there. And so that's why we at least investigate some of this. A large group with the teacher, of course, the teacher here, students around here, small groups, teacher is here, and these are in learning centers, one-on-one with the teacher over here, and then adult helpers, students with teaching students, materials, those types of things, and here's a little guide for it. And it goes through this large group instruction thing that we just talked about. Here's the lecture pause routine that was in the notes. Goes like this: read your notes or questions, ask other students about your notes, and then put corrections or answers in this. And that's where you let students do this. Lecturing 6 to 12 minutes and then pausing for 3 minutes. So that's what lecture pause routines are. Have you heard of that? You would teach for 6 to 12 minutes and then pause for 3 minutes. Allow students to provide into groups and follow this procedure and asking about what they learned. Then this active participation, maintain that uninvolved. How do you do that? Get them asking questions, you asking them questions. How many numbers do you know the answer? That thing. And you may, it's well worth your time to look at this stuff. Randomly selected students, and I say we did in 465, we talked about random name picker as one possibility that you could do on the board. So I've seen the sticks, the popsicle sticks with names on that you draw out of a thing. Those things keep the students on their toes too, because students are given time to discuss possible answers before responding. It's not known which group member will be. Is it more likely when achievers will have the correct answer because they've already talked about it before you did it. So that's how you do that. They get in a group, you give them the questions they're going to be asked, and then you randomly pick people, and even the kids that aren't as well versed can answer. Here's that lively pace. This frequent change up. Have you heard of that? Change ups. Very important. Change ups are anything the teacher does to vary the presentation. Selected change up activities include varying your voice. You have to practice that a little bit. When you change your voice inflections, and I can't tell you how many times I've told student teachers, be aware of your voice inflections, because if you have the same voice all day long for every activity and every instruction, it really starts to blend in. See, that's my pause right there. But you'll find too, if I don't change my voice inflections here, after a while my voice will just blend in to everything else and you'll lose me. So that's change ups. Good teaching strategy. Change ups. Determine the rules for behavior during those presentations, rules during the discussion, and you have to teach those. Just like we will teach you in classroom management, but anything you want them to do routinely, you have to teach them. And what about misbehave? Well, you praise the students that follow the rules. This reinforces students' appropriate behavior and communicates teacher expectations, provides a model of misbehaving students. Yes. And then that flexible grouping. I can move up if I'm doing fast, and especially RTI model, that's important because often you have them set up in those groups. What are participation buddies? This technique, the teacher divides students into teams of 2 and asks the class a question. Each student is instructed to think of the answer and then share it with his or her buddy. The partners then can share their answers with the class. Who does it help? Well, it helps us slower ones who maybe don't process so fast, but by working with a buddy, you may have some more input and get to be part of that, be enlightened. What's about response cards? Each student is given a card with true on one side and false on the other. Teacher makes a statement and asks the students to decide whether it's true or false. After a few seconds, teacher instructs the students to show their answer by placing their cards on their chests with true or false displayed. Then the teacher gives the correct answer, discuss it, and that type of thing. And it can be other things, other kind of responses. And here's that ask, pause, call. Ask a question, pause for several seconds, allowing a thinking time, call an individual group for the response. And this is where you give them that, and us slow processors have a chance to catch up. Otherwise, those hands that are up right away, grunting at you, most of the time represent fast processing people. And then the signals for surprise call-ins, the teacher can prearrange a subtle cue, like standing near their desk, lets the certain students know in advance to be called on next to answer a question or read a passage. And I've seen it done effectively this way, and Lavoie says this too, that you use their name and you say, in a minute here, in a little bit, I'm going to ask you, what is the capital of South Dakota? And then the teacher goes and does a little activity or does a little chore in the classroom and gives that student a chance to pull themselves together. But you signal that they're going to be called, and they get to participate in a successful way. So what about small group? A small group instruction. Well, typically 3 to 7 students for students with learning problems. Tier 2 in that RTI model, and attempt to group students who have similar instructional needs in whatever area you're working on. What are the advantages? Well, able to participate more during instruction, and teachers are able to provide more instruction. Kind of some of the anti things that we did in large instruction. They had more interaction, faster, more specialized. They can progress at their own rates, typically less boring. Most students will tell you that they like that smaller. Progress of students better. You can monitor better that progress, so you can make those changes. Students with language differences a more comfortable setting for participating and asking clarification. And that's what I think is left off here, is with all kids, it's more comfortable. Why is it more comfortable? Well, it's just more overwhelming to try and understand and interact with a whole bunch of different personalities. And so this is kind of what the resource room model is built on, is this small group instructions where it's a little easier to get comfortable with your surrounding and who's all there in that group. And I would say, especially kids learning disabled, almost overwhelmingly will choose that small group instruction. Some more advantage of it, especially important for students with learning behavior problems. We don't talk about that enough, but that's a big part of it. Anytime we discuss kids with learning problems, generally this also is part of the discussion. Small group follow-up can be helpful to students who do not sufficiently learn sufficiently in large group. So maybe it's a follow-up to the large group. May have an advantage over one-on-one instruction because a student with learning problems may learn a skill that is taught to another group member. So they're saying this is an advantage over one-on-one because they can learn from others in a small group. Now one-on-one, that's another conversation, but that's a different level of instruction. And then small group settings provide the opportunities to increase the intensity of intervention for students who have moved to this tier 1. Increase, more intense in small group from individuals. Because the top part of the pyramid, the tier 3, is almost exclusively one-on-one, very intense. So they make progress quickly. They can advance, move up to this tier 2, which is the small group. What are the disadvantages? Well, this. And work more by yourself, more seat work, because we got to keep you going and keep you learning, and so you have to work independently. And the teachers had some more work for teachers because it takes more instruction because you're instructed at different levels based on what the students' needs are. Where in the big class, we basically prepare one lesson for this whole group. But if you have small groups by ability, you have to plan instruction for each of those groups. And teachers must organize more instruction variables than they do in the big ones. Teachers must provide more instruction in the respective academic and content areas. Here's some guidelines that. What are the rules? Are they homogeneous as possible? And homogeneous meaning? Well, you obviously you would think you'd be familiar with the word homo, meaning alike. So these are as much alike as possible, learning-wise. Maintain flexible groupings, and we just talked about that. Was that if they learn faster, they can move up. Maybe if they're not progressing as fast as the rest of the group, they need to go to a lower level group. And then locate, and that would be obvious, but you'd be surprised how often we group them at the beginning of the year, and that's their group for the entire year. And sometimes you may get pushback from a student when you want to change their grouping, especially if you want them to move down a group. That may not be ideal to them. Locate in the area that allows the teacher to scan the entire class. I talked about that, so you can sit with that small group and see your class. Place students in a semicircle so that their shoulders align with the shoulders of the students beside them. Use motivation activities during a small group. And what are those motivation activities? Well, again, let me take you back to the textbook. It explains some of these things. Small group instruction talks about the advantages of them here. Again, please study this. And disadvantages of the small group. And here's the guidelines. Establish the rules, those types of things. Flexible grouping, located, semicircle, motivation. Motivation techniques include providing much positive praise during the small group sessions, using descriptive praise, nonverbal praise, choral responding and to involve everyone, and maintaining enthusiasm and a lively pace. There's that pace again. So that's what it is. Now we get to one student with the teacher. And one-on-one, we call that. Used to help students learning problems learn a new skill. And for the most part, that's what it's about, is teaching that new skill. Appropriate student learning skills that are different from the rest of the class can be used intensely in intervention Tier 2 or Tier 3 in the framework. Those that have high learning needs generally can use them one-on-one. Can be spontaneous, meaning in conjunction with that. This is interesting, and please hang on to this. 3 to 5 minutes is just the amount of time needed to help a student understand a concept, receive correct feedback, understand directions, and feel motivated to continue working. And that's what this is, that you don't spend large parts of time. Okay, here's my veganism, and you're going to be kind of mad at me if I tell you, but if this is all you're doing all day long is working one-on-one with students, couple things. One, your district's not using you very wisely, very judiciously. And number two, you don't have enough to do, because you should be able to instruct 3 to 5 minutes. And then if there's additional practice and skill, this really could be done then by a TA or some kind of a volunteer or that type of thing. Now, one of the things I think you're responsible for as the special ed teacher is to do that instruction and to do the assessments. But drill and practice and corrective work and stuff like that can be done by paraprofessional people. Now that you're mad at me, let me tell you, I've observed many student teachers that work one-on-one a lot because they're in small settings where there's not enough students. But reality is, especially in our bigger districts now, that you should have a caseload as such that you don't have time to work one-on-one with all the students. I would think most days you'll work one-on-one with all the students some, but if you can sit for 45 minutes at a time with one student, I'm not sure we're using you properly. I'm not sure our money is being well spent for you. Okay, you mad at me yet? So this is where these adult helpers come in, the paraprofessionals. Volunteers. They're a powerful resource for increasing engaged learning time of students and learning behavior problems. And again, you can't be everywhere, and we're going to pay you a lot more than we pay this person. A lot of schools can get people that are even qualified, that may even have a credential to be a teacher, to fill these roles sometimes. But nonetheless, it'll be your job as a special ed teacher to train, schedule, interact, those types of things with this group. So what are those paraprofessional programs? Well, what the roles are going to do, how you're going to train them, how you collaborate with them, how to work with these diverse groups. Um, so here, but we don't do a very good job of that, I don't think, of preparing you for this group of working with the paraprofessionals. And you want to, I know sometimes there's even classes and stuff on teaching this, but one of the things I walked in and I was teaching is some gals that were my TAs that had been there for 25 years. So which way do you think the training went in that situation? Okay, yes, I came to them often with questions. Um, and over a year or two, I got a handle on how to work with them and stuff. But I think I had 14 TAs in the building I taught in, and some were personal EAs, some were classroom EAs. All had different responsibilities. All needed a schedule, those types of things. But it took a while before I got that relationship with them to really know how to work with them also. That'd be one of the things you get to figure out the first day you sign a contract with a special ed teacher is how to work with your paraprofessionals. And sometimes if they have, they're there prior to you, they can have some insight you don't have. So here's the peer tutoring we talked about that I want you to investigate on your own. And just walk through this. Here's the class-wide peer tutoring. And again, I know there's some questions on the test on this, so you're going to want to read about this. And then here's the cooperative learning. And this is, I studied this about the time I was in grad school in the 90s, which is about 15 years ago. It was a big buzz. It was where you assigned groups, and then everybody in the group had a job. It really was trying to be another leap from group work. So it instead of group work, it was to be another level of learning in that respect. You figure out what skills that that are important for what you're doing, materials, quiz or tournament questions, whatever you're developing, and then how you're going to do that. And this is where it's a lot of work for the teacher because you figure out what they're going to do. Everybody's going to help one another. Assign students of varying achievement levels to the same teams, and so you have to really hand pick these, and especially as the students get a little older, that's not real popular. And then you train them to help one another. Like this, you teach social skills, how we're going to relate to each other, because that's what's going to happen if you have that range of ability from high to low. We're going to have to train them how to get along. And then what are the rules of this group? Because there will be different rules, and then they can have these last sessions 3 to 5 days a week where they solve things or come up with things, and then conduct those sessions and evaluate how that's going. But in essence, if you go back, well, let me just take you to the textbook quick and see if I can find some of this about this also. This is about the paraprofessionals, the student and tier teaching. This might be helpful here. This is on this page 45 is about the roles and responsibilities of the paraprofessional. I was overwhelmed with it when I first started teaching because immediately I was responsible for so many. And it's not that bad, but it'll be one of your responsibilities. Okay. This is still on the paraprofessional. Peer tutoring, tutors and stuff like that. And I haven't observed this a lot. I don't feel like I really have a handle on all that. I haven't seen that modeled. I haven't read a lot about it. That here, this is about what's on class-wide peer tutoring. That there's some research that supports the strength of that in combining different ability level students together also. Now here's the cooperative learning thing, the research on it. Let me just see if there's anything else on here. Cooperative learning focused on the student team learning techniques involved in Hopkins University. The most successful approach to improving academic achievement include group goals and individual accountability. It's where they are all assigned a different job on the same task. Let's see. Varying achievement levels, train them to help one another, review the class rules. Should be considered review of the research results for students with learning disabilities are not always a positive one. Set of guidelines to ensure that it is. Provide adequate teacher feedback support. Select carefully. Select the groups carefully. Monitor the progress with formative assessments, and make certain that they have a role conducive to learning rather than auxiliary roles, meaning nothing. And for example, here, if you do a little research on cooperative learning, what you'll find is, for example, you may have somebody that is a lower skilled person that's a timer that keeps the group on time, that they know we spend 5 minutes on this and 5 minutes on that. And then somebody else in the group is the reporter that only reports the findings of the group, and somebody else draws or does the writing, and somebody else does the research, and everybody's assigned a group. And then there's a grade for that. There's a grade for each job as well as an overall outcome grade. Okay, so there. So this is materials. Let's go back to materials. So here's materials. Provides students opportunities to practice skills the teacher has presented. Allows teachers some freedom to work with small groups or individual students. Materials. Be a big part of your day as it is any teacher. So what about seat work? Ensure that the independent work assignments are tailored to the student's level. Variety of independent seat work activities. Folders. What are those? Some cushion activities to accommodate students finishing their work at different times. Cushion meaning, yeah, a little bit softer. Some more seat work. Format of worksheet to improve learner friendliness. This is what we call modifying. How do you do that so it's more friendly? Design procedures that enable students to ask questions while doing independent work. Careful not to have learned helplessness, though. Here's what happens. You write one thing, and teacher, is this right? They put one answer down. And here's what you do as a special ed teacher. You say, do the first 5, and then bring it to me to check with. And before you do that even, you might need to do the I do, we do, you do. And that is, we do. I show you how to do it, we do some together, and now you do it. And you have to make sure they know the instructions of what to do. And they use the direct instruction teaching sequence to teach behavior expectations, meaning that they respond, has high choral response from them. Alright, again, let's go see what we find in the textbook about this area. Here's the one on learner friendliness. Because some students become anxious when given a full worksheet of problems to complete, it helps divide worksheets into fewer problems, fewer sentences, fewer challenges. This enables students to complete as much work without feeling overwhelmed. Also, a full worksheet can be divided into sections. Students can be encouraged to work on one at a time. I had a student that was a very high functioning student I taught in the treatment center that would be overwhelmed. I'd give her a whole day's worth at a time, and she would just kind of freak out over that. So can you take that assignment and break it into parts so I can do it in smaller parts? Can they ask questions during that time? Ensure the students understands instructions for the seat work and direct instructions for those behavioral expectations. Alright. How about self-correcting materials? It's a huge part of it. And here is this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different things that are self-correcting feedback devices. Okay. And here's 2 instructional games that you can do. And let's go to the textbook to see what they are. So here's the flap. It tells what the flap is, the windows, stylus, matching cards. It tells what all these are. And has nice little pictures of them. Alright. Takes you through all these. And that will be part of your assignment, part of your projects today. You get to create some of those, and I'll explain that in a little bit here. And I want to begin at this point where we start this. They spend too much time in the classroom with instructional materials, thus the materials used are not lead to frustration, failure, and practicing. To some degree, material serves as a teacher. Okay, is that a little hard to think? Self-correcting things can be like a teacher. The more teacher functions it can serve, the more useful it is. Inexpensive materials can provide instruction, present a stimulus or task, provide feedback about correction. So this is what's good about it. Here's why we use self-correcting things. Inexpensive, can provide instruction, present stimulus or task, and provide feedback about correctness of student responses. And all of these corrective feedback things, for the most part, are somewhat self-motivating. Why? Because students like that immediate feedback. Self-correcting materials give the student immediate feedback without teaching or being present. We say it keeps them from practicing errors. If self-correcting materials are especially useful with students with learning problems who have a history of academic failure. It's important to reduce their failure experience, particularly public failures. That's the embarrassment factor. You remember, I'd rather be mean, bad, stupid, mean, bad, ugly, dumb, anything except dumb. I would rather be gothic, I'd rather be suicidal, I'd like to be funny. All the masks students wear so that they're not dumb because of this right here, public failures. All right, and so that's what this becomes about. So how do we create learning that they can have that feedback? When a student makes a mistake with a self-correcting material, it's a private event. No one else knows. Only the student sees the error, and the error can be corrected immediately. Furthermore, if immediate feedback is not provided, mistakes can be practiced. And I remember when I was studying this, that was the big thing, is you didn't want them practicing mistakes. Got to go through the whole sheet. Here's a sheet. Go through the whole sheet doing it wrong. With corrective feedback, self-correcting, you get that feedback quicker than that. Helps maintain their attention. Student can approach each response with a game-playing attitude. I ask you, which students don't like to have some kind of a game type learning? Game-playing attitude. I get this one right. Self-correcting things. So then it takes you through a number of these. Talks about how to make them in each of these. Right, so let's jump here ahead a little bit. Have to go through those. What about the technology part of it? Well, this on page 64 talks about the different technology levels. And again, I have a bias towards this because here's what I think about technology, and I shared this in the other class. It is the most motivating things kids can get their hands on. If used properly, a high percentage of kids are motivated by using the computer. So Mercer talks here about what are these high technology things. Well, first, voice recognition software. Obviously, the microcomputer, the one I'm on now, the one you're on now, has that, where it literally can convert voice to text. So you could use your voice to not only run the computer, but dictate different things. There's handheld devices like the iPods. I have a BlackBerry. My wife has the Droid X. All are very good. My wife is so functional. It's a Google Droid that she literally can run her office off of the stupid thing. Then there's computer-assisted instruction, like in some drill and practice, and that's what we spent a lot of time creating in 465, is computer-aided instruction. And then distance ed, different place, online. And then computerized adaptive testing. Test questions vary according to the test taker's response. What's the one? I can't think of it now, but there's one school that uses that all the time where Success Maker it's called. And Success Maker is where the student will spend 20-minute sessions, and then it continues to regulate, change, and alter instruction based on the responses and the learning. And then it talks about some medium technology, calculators, presentation software, laser video discs, pen-based computing thing, and then low things, post-it notes, charter paper, and those types of things. Let me go on here. The technology. And what can this software be used for? Like drill and practice, tutorial, educational games, simulations, problem solving, word processing, all those things the technology can solve for you. But it has to match, and this is one of the big criticisms of this, is that often they just get stuck in there. What they are, consider the evidence base for this. In other words, what is the research that this is supportive? And this is what happens when you buy programs instead of creating your own like we did in 465, is you hope that it matches what you're teaching. And one of the guidelines that Blackhurst in 05 said is there evidence that what you're doing work? Technological tools should be selected based on alignment with curriculum outcomes. In other words, what they're supposed to be learning should match student needs, particularly true when selecting assistive tech for disabilities. It's a tool that aids a student in meeting their IEP goals. Don't forget this. That's what you're working towards. And so sometimes it's entertainment, sometimes it's fun, and there's some room for that, but ultimately this stuff comes into play if it's helping them reach their goals. Homework, what all students love. Homework. What is a reasonable amount? Have an integral part planned so the students at their level, make sure they understand it, evaluate it, reinforce it, involve the parents, and through effective supports. Let me show you what the text says about that. It's very interesting. With homework, first of all, Cooper and Nye in 94 conclude that homework accounts for about 20% of the total time typical students spend in academic tasks. 20% of the time spent is homework. So then we go through some guidelines of it and report that 85% of the teachers experience problems in getting students to complete their homework. Okay, so this is the thing about homework. 88 teachers, students with disabilities, found that most teachers use homework regularly but fail to use quality practices consistently. 85% say they have trouble getting it back. So one of the things that always seems to doom in students with learning disabilities is homework. Failure to complete and turn in homework. They know if the students with motivation may be related to failure of learning disability teachers to give feedback on the homework. Like this, they found 43% do not discuss or review homework. So that's roughly half. You assign me something and we never evaluate it, we never discuss it, never is back part of it, just turn it in. 42% do not regularly grade homework. You want to have depth of homework, not only with kids with learning disabilities, but others, is don't grade it. If you're going to assign stuff, you've got to evaluate it, make it part of that learning. And 42% do not regularly grade it or involve parents in the homework process. Only 41% solicit feedback from parents. And one of Jackson's teachers regularly, they have to ask us a question, or we have to sign a paper that we've seen it or something like that. From the limited research on the effects of homework for students with learning disability, it appears that quality practices are related to positive student achievements. In other words, doing these things we're talking about. Alright, So then it goes into the thing about, what is a reasonable amount? Well, it has some guidelines. Most common one here is about 10 minutes multiplied by the student's grade level. So how much would that be if you're in third grade? Well, third times 10 would be 30 minutes of homework. What else do we have here? Make homework an integral part of learning. Most students with learning problems view homework as an imposition and remotely related to the skills, whereas most students without learning problems view homework as important and related to life. Now, isn't that interesting? So, how do we connect that? How do we help students with learning disabilities see it as an integral part of learning? My kids never see it as an imposition. And at times, more when they're younger, they were excited to have homework, something to do. Hey, homework should not be used busy work, or as punishment. Right. Plan homework assignments to students' instructional level, obviously. Make sure the student understands what the assignment is. Hard to create new learning. Generally, it's something that they know how to do. And then evaluate it. Teachers should evaluate all homework assignments and maintain a cumulative record of all results. Assign and grade encourages students to complete the homework. Moreover, students who do not test well, homework provides an opportunity to improve their grade, display their skills and knowledge. Of course, the research says the kids that complete the most homework tend to do better on the tests. I know, that's hard to believe, but that's the result of it. And then reinforce this, and I'm telling you, that was my thing I learned to do teaching special ed kids, is make a big deal out of completed work. And involve parents. And how do you involve parents? They found that parents felt inadequate to help the homework. Parents desired more information on how to help the children. This is where two-way communication comes in. Become partners on their instructional team. Send a letter about their policies of homework and how you're going to evaluate it. And then here is tips regarding parental involvement, including in homework. Schedule a specific time or place for homework. I did a parent group here in town one time, had me come do a part of their meeting on how to get their kids to do homework, and I went through some of these same things. A time and place, and I had said set up a light, and this is the time. Supervise the session by periodically checking. Provide the environment conducive for learning. The areas need to be well lighted, free of distractions. Provide the student with appropriate materials, so make sure they've always got paper and pencils, things they need. Praise the student for doing homework. Share with the teacher any concerns. And one of the things I told them too is then shut everything off in the house. So even if you only have one child and it's homework hour, and just say it's every night at 5 o'clock or whenever that time is, then everything goes off, and you too as a parent quiet yourself and read or make yourself available that way. But what most of the parents shared was they send them to go do homework. And that, of course, and the earlier you start this, the better. But you may have to be that person that teaches them how to get this homework thing going at their house. Then facilitate home through effective support systems. It's a good way to do that too. So homework and the headache. Now, I have a veganism here on homework, and just go ahead and put your stuff down and sit back and just listen to this whining I have. One of the things I'm going to ask you to do as a teacher is regularly distinguish for students the difference when there's something assigned. Is it seat work or is it homework? One of the things that I see student teachers, and I get this from my own kids, is when things come home, is it seat work they didn't get done, or was it homework? Now I know things they don't get done in the day are generally turn into homework, but what kids need to understand, and this is where my fourth grader gets a little confused, is something is assigned in class, and one of the things that he automatically assumes is, if I don't want to do it now, I'll do it tonight because I get to do something more fun. Got it? Yes, because there's certain things, so I might tend to start, but as quickly as I can get to a more desirable activity, I do. And so I pretend like I have it done. And so I get things home sometimes that are for the largely undone. And I say, why didn't you do this in class? And he says, I didn't have time. And when I check with the teacher, says, oh, I always give them time. So you distinguish that for students. This is seat work. Do it now. Show me when you have 5 done. Let me see some progress. And that also may mean keeping the other students from jumping up and going to more desirable activities if they're done first. Because this is another thing that kills our kids is as soon as you're done, you can go on the computer, you can do something fun, and they get something done in 1/10 the time it's going to take some of the slow workers. And so immediately the other student feels, gee, they're done. I've got one thing done out of 20, and they have them all done already. And it would not be unusual to have that kind of range of ability. So you manage that part of the class of what they do, and you also help them decide what is seat work and what is homework. How about scheduling? Maximum instructional time, short work assignments to longer ones. You have to kind of teach them how to move forward on those things. Highly preferred with less preferred. We'll look at that a little bit. Daily schedule for each student. Students can be completed in a school day. Time cues, complementary manner, and a variety of activities and alternative schedules. All right. So what about the scheduling? Let's look at some of those. Maximum instructional time, so that you've got time to do all the things you need to get done. Short to longer ones. Some students be unable to work in seat works long periods of time, so you get shorter successes. What is highly preferred and less preferred? Well, like for example, reading is preferred over math. Math is scheduled first, followed by reading. And if none of the academics subjects are preferred, it may be necessary to use non-academics like art, recess, music, Phi-Ed. You sandwich those between the less preferred, like my least favorite one is reading. Well, once we do reading, then we can do art. That is alternating. That's motivating. How about a daily schedule for each? Well, some are anal like that like to know what's going to happen. Some of you are like that, like to know what's going to happen. Okay, so they know what those expectations are. How long do we got to do this? How long does it last? Not unusual for kids to know how long does this last? How long do we have to do this? And if I tell them until we get it done, does not always cut it. And then they complete it in a school day. Students need the opportunity to begin each day with a clean slate, especially special ed kids. You start dragging these uncompleted things from day to day, you will choke them off. Many teachers do that. Quick story. If you don't get your work done, your seat work done, your name goes on the board what that assignment is. Come to see a student teacher one day, and I think his name was Robert or something, and I counted he had 14 missing assignments on the board. 14, his name was up to 14. He was the only name that was on every single assignment that was up there. I say to the student teacher, now is this helping him? By putting his name on there, does that help him get it done? Okay. So what can they do? How can we get things done? Every day stops and a new day starts. And your job will be to manage it in that way. What are time cues? Well, some way that they know how much longer. Little clocks, little timers, so we know how much longer we got to work on this. Again, for those of us that are kind of feeling hopeless, feeling overwhelmed, and we see the timer that we work on this now for 10 minutes, I think I can give you a better effort than if I feel like I'm going to be working on this the rest of my life. And my kids are that way. How long do we got to do this? I even do this when we go to the garden. If we work together on this, guys, in 15 minutes we'll have these beans picked. And both of them would see in their mind, I can do this for 15 minutes, because they would look at those long bean rows and go, this will take the rest of our life. So that's what a time cue is it helps them see how much longer to work on something. And then schedule activities in a complementary manner where they can kind of see what's coming and what's going to happen. Plan a variety of activities where you bring in the computer and stuff. How can we alternate that schedule? Then it goes into scheduling for an elementary school. Talks about the day's events, opening exercise, closing exercise, those things. And you'll have this instruction other places, but here you get the flyover on it. Analyze the day's events, what you have to get done. Generally you need about, have you ever heard this before? On a 6-hour day, you need about 4.5, 5 hours of solid instruction in a 6-hour school day, where the students are on task 4.5 to 5 hours. Okay, on a 6-hour day. This is why the homeschool people are starting to zoom by, because when you have that low teacher ratio of one teacher to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 students, they can get so much more done in that same instructional time. You will have to bring along a much bigger group if you're the regular teacher, and if you're a special ed teacher, you're going to have more learning needs. But traditionally, it's about 4.5 to 5 hours, and you start with this opening exercise every day, and you've all observed, but 15 minutes, 20 minutes in elementary school about what is the weather, what is the date, what is the time, what is the month, the season, all those things are this opening exercise. 15 to 20 minutes is generally what it's planned for. And then that schedule of academic instructions, how you're going to deliver that. And then a closing activity is about 10 to 15 minutes each day also. Here's a little sample schedule. That's how you schedule. And then at the secondary level, a little bit different. Let me jump back here and see. About 50 minutes. And now we're seeing some of this block schedule up to 90. That changes this a lot. Planning is essential for that time because it's so short. Can be used with adolescents if there's flexible ability in scheduling. Elective students can select courses in which they have good opportunity to succeed. Course load reflect the student needs. Expand course offerings used in some settings to accommodate learning problems. In other words, they can take other things. So here, this is you in the resource room. Their academic, emotional, social needs to be considered. Classroom teachers usually have preferred times for sending students to the resource room. And when do you think that is? When do they want to send them? Well, for example, during reading time, if they have resource reading, it would be ideal if they could come to you in the resource room during their reading. Now, what does that look like? For example, where Jackson goes, and there's 4 sections of each class. So let's say, for example, there's 4 sections of 4th grade, and each class, each section has a student that has reading needs. It'd be great to get all those 4th graders to the resource room during that reading time, if they follow the same schedule. That's how you could, teachers have those preferred times. And students that come to the resource at a specific time way have different instructional needs, and that's what makes this a challenge, because even this group will have different needs. But if you're working in a big resource room where there's multiple teachers, you still could group those students according to their needs. Some situations are helpful to a resource teacher and teach in the general class setting. That happens sometimes. This has gotten to be a big thing, is when do you get to work with those regular teachers and planning on those types of things. Students may come to the resource room at different times depending on the day. Instruction in various academic areas at fixed times of the day. For example, if you want reading instruction in this thing, here's the time we do that. And it's a challenge. This scheduling will be a big part of your challenge also, how to accommodate all these. And that's when you really have to be judicious to use your paraprofessionals, volunteers, those type of things. Now, when I say volunteers, what does that mean? My wife's aunt, obviously retired teacher, she volunteers as a mentor to a student, and she loves to do instruction with that girl that she mentors, and the special ed teacher works with her and what they're working on. They're a volunteer. Encourage the reinforcement being on time and making a quick transition from task to task and even room to room, and return from the resource room, give students an assignment to work on until the general ed teacher can involve them in their ongoing activities. So that might be something that you also do. And then how about this equipment? This one not so much, I don't think. I'm going to poo-poo that. Can you take that one off? Because now we can do all the recording we want on the computers. This technology is kind of old, but here's a number of other things that will be what we call some equipment that may be sufficient. This one is interesting also. What are some of those things? Let's jump ahead again here in your textbook. Classroom equipment. It talks about the overhead projector and its usefulness that you might want to look at. But it's some of these other things I wanted to show you that can be used. some of these small items like the miniature chalkboard. What is a flannel board? Have a piece of cardboard can be covered with flannel, and the top rough side of a piece of masonite can be used to run this flannel board. Game materials, construction. How about this? A tracing screen. Have you heard of that? A wire screen with a cardboard edge makes an excellent tracing screen. When paper is placed over the screen and written on with a crayon, the letters become raised and can be used for tracing. Okay, so that's what that's about. All right. Our mirror for grooming. Magnetic boards, sticking things on. You've seen those used, I'm sure. And then here again, some outline of filing systems here. So that's chapter 3. So there you have chapter 2 lecture.